irony is I'm supposed to be working on a final project for this nanomaterials class, but I'm not. I'm doing this instead because I'm so fed up with school. All right, welcome back to my YouTube. Thanks for watching. Today is going to be the second installment of a new series called Absurd or Absurdity. I just explore, come up with seemingly absurd ideas. So my last video was on what would the world be like if we stopped lethal war.
So watch that if you haven't.
This is the second episode. Here are 10 absurd ways to fix higher education in the United States. My first suggestion for improving higher education in the United States is to make education a protected status. So we have protected status in job hiring, which is like you can't discriminate based on race or gender or even certain disabilities depending on the nature of work. So if you make education a protected status, that would mean that employers can't discriminate based on education level. So their reason for not hiring you can't be, well, he's only a high school graduate, he didn't attend college. At first you might be like,
what are you talking about? Someone who goes to college probably knows more, is more intelligent, probably is more driven, yada yada.
But if we have a system in place that values skills and knowledge over accreditation, over a stamp of approval, then that should come to the surface in interviews and in the hiring process. It would relieve a lot of pressure for people to go straight into college because they could say, hey, look, if I can teach myself a skill, if I can learn to code, I have just as great a chance as getting hired as someone who has an undergraduate in computer engineering. So why don't I just spend a year to 3 years instead of a 4-year undergraduate program learning to code and then get hired anyway? It would force institutions like NYU and Columbia and all these great colleges to start focusing on skill development with their students rather than just sort of rote testing and the same old status quo. So did they teach you how to solder?
Did they teach you how to actually install heat exchangers?
Can you actually 3D print and model with CAD?
My second absurd idea for making higher education better is get rid of college acceptances. If you submit the application, you're in. In the short term, you're gonna have higher dropout rates because everyone's gonna be like,
oh, I can do it, I can go to Harvard.
And then they're gonna figure out,
well, it's a lot harder than I thought.
But in the long term, it'll actually create a culture where people have to self-identify. Am I ready? Am I driven enough to go and spend the money and start learning these skills? One, it gets rid of this whole legacy thing. So if you get rid of acceptances altogether, it's gonna lower that bias and barrier against non-legacy people. The third absurd idea to make schools better in higher education is to make the first year of every degree free. Right now in our culture, there's a lot of talk around free college, right? And that's actually a way more nuanced discussion than most people give credit for, especially like Bernie calls it. I'm pretty sure he's probably called it a human right or some shit.
I love you, Bernie, but come on.
So this would do some cool stuff. One is it would remove pressure for students to stay in school if they don't like it because they feel like they have a sunk cost after the first year and that if they drop out, they lost all that money. So if you go for a year and you're like, well, this really isn't for me, no harm, no foul, you lost nothing. In fact, you learned something about yourself and what maybe you need to improve on, or now you learn you hate that area and you can go study the other thing. The second thing is it encourages students to experiment with different majors, different degrees. So you might think, well, I kind of want to study filmmaking, but I've got this nagging interest in mechanical engineering. So good news is it'll take you 5 years to graduate now, but you can take the first 2 years for free in those 2 degrees. So your first year of filmmaking is free and your first year of mechanical engineering is free. So you can take the filmmaking one, realize you didn't like it, no worries, take the mechanical engineering one, and if you love it, great. You haven't paid any money on that first one, nor the first year of your second one. And it would actually create more generalists, not just these specialists who only know one myopic field, but they sort of know how to do a little bit of everything, which is cool. If this is too absurd for some people and they're like,
well, man, that's crazy talk,
then I suggest we just make the first few courses of every degree free. So you get 3 or 2 courses for each program you could take for free. That would be really cool because I'm studying chemical and biomolecular engineering, but if I could take 2 or 3 courses in computer science or industrial design for free on the side, that would be rad. If you can dabble and take 5 courses while you're at college in 5 different areas, all for free, that's gonna be really rad, and you're gonna have, again, a little bit of knowledge about tons of different things. And that'll make you more interesting in interviews. You'll be able to explore little side hobbies throughout your time so you don't get burnt out and feel like all you're doing is this one thing. I think it would be actually really sweet. It would also help people who aren't sure if they want to go to school come and test it. I'm taking these 5 courses and they're all for free because they're in different programs. That would be a super cool first semester, and you can decide if you like college or not. 4th, absurd idea to make colleges better in the US. For every tuition, you get 2 degrees. If I pay NYU the unholy sum of money that I pay them, I get 2 degrees. And this is the cool part. I can take them back to back, I can take them at the same time, or I could take them 20 years apart, 10 years apart. I paid them, maybe it has an expiration date. I paid them, I got my degree in chemical and biomolecular engineering, then I took 8 years off, I practiced in the field, and while I was out there, I realized that there's this hot new thing in nanomaterials, and I come back and they have a degree in nanomaterials now, and I study that, and my old tuition covers it. Number 5. Number 5 is abandon 4-year degrees. The key to this idea is that each institution can create their own tests for knowledge, right? You want to study international affairs, right? So maybe we have a list of like 40 things that international affairs students from Harvard should be able to do and should know before leaving. Now, you offer courses, a spread of courses, and maybe there's some sort of requirement, but there's no time requirement, and there's no fixed offerings. This is only in the spring of your freshman year, this is only in the fall of your junior year, none of that shit. You have courses, and if you take the courses, they'll teach you those 40 things you need to know before graduating, but you can take those tests for knowledge at any point. So when you feel ready, maybe it's in 2 years, maybe it's in 3, maybe it's in 4, maybe it's in 6, you can take the graduation tests, no matter what they look like. You can come up with that, but you can take those tests when you feel you're ready. And if you've mastered those skills up to the standards of that university, you're good to go. Here's your diploma. It gets rid of this idea that all students are the same. Everyone paces themselves differently, and everyone has a unique way of learning. Some people can go on YouTube and learn shit in 4 nights that would take a whole semester worth for someone else to learn. So this doesn't punish those quick students, and it also doesn't force the slower students to keep up to date and make everyone 2 years. Starting to introduce flexibility, empower students. Number 6, 5 internships equals 1 degree. Arbitrary number, each institution could come up with their own. Say I wanted to get a degree from RISD in graphic design, right? So RISD would say, okay, you're getting our accreditation, so you still have to pay us tuition, but it's gonna be less because you're not necessarily using our resources or using our professors. Maybe you're doing some of that on the side, that's fun, that's cool. But so pay us a little bit because you get the RISD stamp at the end of this. You wanna be a graphic design major, go get 5 solid graphic design internships. Here's a list of 50 companies that students have used in the past. And as soon as you're done with those, you get the RISD stamp, you get the diploma. Number 7 is a no-brainer for me, and it's less radical than the other ones. Get rid of prerequisites in your curriculums. Leave it up to the students to read course descriptions, go and talk to the professors who teach those courses, and see if they think they're ready to take the damn course. You could still have the course description that says, in the past, students perform better and get A's and B's if they've had biochemistry and intro to bio before taking this organic chemistry too. But if I still want to take organic chemistry too, and I haven't had those prereqs, let me do it, because I'm going to be on Khan Academy on the side. I'm going to be working. I know that I can learn on my own really well. Let me do it. And if I fail, I fail. I'm going to have to retake it anyway. Like, why are we trying to prescribe this so fiercely to responsible adults? So you could just put like, hey, look, people on average, people who don't have these recommended courses but take my course anyway, they usually get a C- on average. That doesn't mean you will, but I'm just letting you know. All right, number 8 is introduce verbal examinations. So I think high schools especially, but also higher education, because students are more equipped to handle this sort of thing. Start introducing different exam models. You meet with your professor, maybe you have a conversation about thermodynamics. He says, I'm trying to heat up this 1,000 cubic meter room in 40 minutes. It's starting at this temperature. Jake, what do you suggest? And he's taking notes. Okay, he seems to know a lot about Carnot engines. He seems to know a lot about heat exchangers, but he's a little shaky on shaft work, whatever it is. And then maybe you have like a hands-on component, right? Like maybe you're in an electrical engineering class or physics 2 or whatever, and you have to do a little breadboard, build a little circuit, and turn on a little light bulb. These things, I think, resonate with students more, and it helps retention. It's more exciting, and it removes that pressure of a written exam, and it gets rid of that bias for people. Because written exams are highly gameable, highly hackable. Everyone knows it. Number 9, very radical. Number 9 is abandon exams altogether. It's not some lefty feel good, we don't want to hurt people's feelings with grades. That's not my argument. My argument is like a first principles thing. Like, why do we have exams?
Well, we have exams because we want to test if students have actually learned the material that was taught.
Fair enough. Well, but why do we actually care if students have learned the material, right? They're paying for the tuition regardless.
Well, we want to know if students actually learn the material because we don't want to pass them and graduate them if they haven't, because then it will reflect poorly on the university, right?
That's fair, fine. But why not just say, look, if you're not passing but you want to keep progressing, fine, we don't care, you're still paying us. And then when you get into an interview, even though you went to Harvard, you're either going to not know a damn thing and not get hired anyway, and they'll just be like, I don't know why this kid paid for Harvard tuition. It doesn't reflect badly on the institution. Or B, you have like a 2.1 GPA because you don't believe in exams or you were busy with internships and side projects, and you have an amazing portfolio and a shit ton of hard skills because you're actually learning your shit through the way you learn it, not through the traditional curriculum and the traditional exams.
Well, the students want to know how they're progressing.
And I'm cool with that because that's actually that's empowering students and helping them deliberately, right? So that's fine. So basically the idea I have is like, if there's students who are failing, fine, meet with them, see if they are failing and want to be passing, right? And figure out why and help them. Or if they're failing and you're like, do you feel like you're not learning? And they go, no, I feel great. Then just be like, okay, well, can you just transfer into our students who aren't actually learning anything but chose to stay? Oh, this is a kid from the not actually learning but chose to stay. Let's see what he's all about. They meet with me, and maybe I was learning a ton. I just didn't give a damn, couldn't be bothered with the exams, so it was fine. Number 10 is very simple. I'm going to end on a simple one. Someone needs to do online education already, a very good accredited online education program.
In general, just trying to encourage our culture to start playing with learning more. Learning is like such a joyous and curious exploration, and it's actually deeply personal. But because of the Industrial Revolution and other things, we've implemented a system, which it does pretty good as a system, right? But it's just one system. So I just want people, students, teachers, professors, hiring managers, to just start thinking about education as a little more malleable, and you can experiment with a little more. So if you're a student, teacher, whatever, just start experimenting a little bit at first. Like maybe if you're a student, don't study for an exam and just see how you do on the spot. You went to every lecture, I want to see if I can apply it in real time. Maybe stop thinking about GPA as much and start doing way more portfolio building and side projects, or focusing on internships, developing hard skills. If you're a teacher or professor, maybe don't make a lesson plan for one day out of every week and just improvise and start introducing that joy and curiosity, exploration vibe back into the classroom. And this isn't meant to hate on teachers or professors or anything like that, because they don't get paid enough and they are doing a shit ton with very limited resources. That's not the vibe at all. It's just saying, because of the system and because of incentives, we have this kind of cookie cutter model right now that it's easy to fall into if you're a teacher. And you're beholden to the exam, so I don't blame you because you have to keep your job, but just start experimenting a little bit. Maybe introduce for your class, I have my traditional exams, or if you pass the first exam, you can opt for the verbal exams from now on, or the project-based lane of the classroom where you pass the first exam, well then the rest of your grades are all project-based. So just start getting a little more creative with it. And same for hiring managers. If you see a student who looks really good but they went to a school you don't recognize, or maybe their GPA is a little lower but they have a ton of side projects and shit, maybe interview them and see what they're about. This was episode 2 of my Absurd series. I hope you liked it. The first one, if you missed it, was about making war non-lethal by 2050. So check that out if you haven't. It just starts this cool, weird path and you will land at ideas you haven't thought about before. It's just a cool intellectual exercise. So let me know if you have sort of an absurd idea you think I should explore that you've read about or whatever, and I'll check it out and maybe do a full video on it. Thanks for watching, and hope you liked it. Bye. Bye-bye.